All right, let's talk a little bit about how ADHD looks different in women. My camera's being stupid and dumb because it keeps quitting recording after like 10 seconds. Not gonna get into it until I know you're gonna behave. Or you guys will leave me alone. All right, we seem to be in business now. So let's talk a little bit about ADHD, not just in women, but specifically how ADHD can look different in women than it may look in men, or how it looks different in girls versus how it may show itself in boys. As always, this whole video is my own thoughts, things that I've learned, but I'm not an expert by any means, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. I know we live in a day and an age right now where there's many a debate about boys and girls and stereotypes and gender fluidity or whatever. We are going to talk about the simple fact that when we look at boys and we look at girls, when it comes to ADHD, there are some significant differences that we can see, not all the time, but that we can see present themselves. Or should I say, some main differences in how ADHD presents itself in boys versus girls, men versus women. For example, when it came to how my ADHD showed itself in school is when you typically see people diagnosed with ADHD. And a big reason why I think that we don't see women and girls diagnosed with ADHD as much as boys and men is because it manifests itself so differently. When it comes to school, for example, my ADHD didn't show itself in a really energetic kid who was disruptive or had trouble sitting still. I had trouble sitting still, very, very much so, but it wasn't as visible. In my specific circumstance, and this is something that we see across the board with a lot of girls who have ADHD, for me, it presented itself more in daydreaming. Daydreaming through school, I seem like I'm just great and not making noise, not being disruptive, but my brain is like in another world. Also, it was in difficulty focusing. Now, this is something that I think all of the things I'm going to talk about tie back to, and I think one of the main points that I could bring up is that with me, and I think this kind of applies to women versus men, with women, with me, my ADHD was internalized. I think ADHD in boys and men kind of is more like in your face and it's more outward and all of that. With women and with my circumstances, my ADHD was very, very much internalized. So another big way that my ADHD manifested itself in school would be in my difficulty focusing. And again, this didn't really show. I may have been sitting there and seem like I'm really paying attention and I'm really focused, but I'm really having trouble grasping what you're saying. I'm really having trouble taking the information that you're giving me and storing it for later recall or for use in my homework. And this was really a struggle for me that I thought I was just a daydreamer. I wasn't trying hard enough to focus. But that wasn't the case at all. I could try my hardest and I really had trouble. So I looked focused, but inside, internally, I was really having a hard time focusing on what was being said. This video itself is very ADHD already. I feel like I am not very organized in what I am saying. So let's just rewind and let me just make my two main points. First being that I think that a lot of the differences we see in how ADHD manifests itself between men and women, some of the main differences come just from gender. The differences we have between as men and women, we just see that it comes out in different ways. And unfortunately, we live in a society where it's a lot of the ways that it manifests in women kind of go under the radar because it's not as in your face, especially in the school years when a lot of children are diagnosed. It's not like big red flags like a kid who's constantly disruptive or really, you can't get him to sit in a seat. With the girls, you're seeing it's more internalized, which brings me to my second main point that I could make is that I think a main difference between how it shows in men and women, ADHD, good old ADHD, is that with women, it's more internalized. Sometimes it just comes down to just a pure control. I've mentioned it before, disorganization can be a big telltale sign of ADHD. But I know I'm not the only woman out there who has ADHD, and this is rang true, is you can walk into my home and it seems very organized. I'm constantly rearranging things. I'm very obsessed with things all having a place. Messes drive me nuts. I don't work well in a messy environment. But that's not to say that it's not a struggle. I am constantly fighting against this nature to just kind of be messy. It's like I have a deep desire that I don't want things messy. I want things clean. I thrive better in a clean environment when things are organized. Yet at the same time, it's very easy for me to slip into disorganization and mess and become overwhelmed. Another great example is you think of people with ADHD as they can never be anywhere on time. They tend to be late, or they just forget about commitments altogether. Not me, no. And this isn't because it's that I remember everything, that I've got a good memory. I definitely have the symptom of ADHD, of being very, so forgetful. The only difference is the things that happen behind the scenes. I write things down 3 or 4 times. I have literally one on the fridge, one on the wall, one in my 3 calendars that I will write the same things down 3 times. And on top of that, sometimes I sit down and have a 4th calendar, which is my breaks down hours of the day calendar. So I have learned and lived where being late and forgetting things, commitments, is just not acceptable. I don't know that this is something that's a gender expectations where women are supposed to be together and on time and it's unacceptable to be late. I think it may just be me. I'm not really sure, but I definitely I have to work really hard. So just because I'm not late and just because I don't forget things doesn't mean that that's not something that I'm constantly having to fight against. But that is another reason that ADHD can fly under the radar, because you're looking for someone who can't sit still. You're looking for someone who is late. You're looking for someone who forgets their homework assignments. And I mean, school, again, it always is good to bring it back to school. The only reason I passed a lot of my classes was because I did my homework. If I couldn't focus and I was really bad at studying for tests, I couldn't remember the information. ADHD. But when you see me turning in my homework every week, and I do okay on that, and then you just think, she doesn't have a problem, she just needs to study harder. When in reality, the whole through my school years, I was struggling with ADHD and had no idea. Nobody had any idea. I write notes, to help me stay less all over the place. But writing notes in my book, to follow while I'm making videos, doesn't always work the best to help keep me on track. I try so hard. It doesn't always work though. It's Tuesday. Oh, my back almost cramped. Whew. Another example of how I just don't fit the typical stereotypes, and I feel like maybe a lot of other women out there can relate to how they don't fit the stereotypes, is you guys will have to take my word for it, because the ADHD shines bright and true in the way that I talk and the way that I kind of have trouble staying in an organized pattern when I'm talking to you guys. But if you're not you guys, this camera, or my husband, or my parents and my brothers, my immediate family, I don't seem like I have ADHD. I don't talk like I have ADHD. There's jets. I love the sound of freedom. It doesn't even make me mad when they interrupt, but we still should wait till they're done. Which of course derailed my train of thought. If you were just an ordinary person on the street, maybe a coworker of mine, you would not know, most likely, that I have ADHD by the way that I talk. And what I mean by that is I don't talk like someone with ADHD, that's what I was saying. A lot of people stereotypically expect somebody with ADHD to, I don't know, kind of behave how I behave on camera, where your thoughts kind of go from one thing to another, and then you kind of go off on a rabbit trail, and then you, oh shoot, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, it was this, and blah, 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 talking fast, all those sorts of things, right? Not even if I don't really know you, I've got some very, very close friends who I do not act like this around. I do not talk like this around. In fact, it's always been most comfortable for me to listen more than I'm talking. You might see me and I could sit there and I could listen to you talk for literally 20 minutes straight, only interjecting to let you know that I'm listening. And I am listening. I'm able to focus very well on when people are venting their problems, or they're just trying to talk things out. They have a story, an exciting thing they want to tell me. And I can be very focused on those things, which is one reason why I love psychology. I really have a passion for that. It genuinely interests me, and so I am very focused when it comes to that sort of thing. But you may even open the door wide open and say, so tell me about your day. Did anything interesting happen? And I, in most cases, again, unless you're you guys or like my husband or my immediate family, I am going to be very aware of how much I'm talking. Any sort of rabbit trails, I'll try to stick right to the point. That's just yet another way that I don't fit the typical stereotypes of someone who has ADHD. Again, you guys will just have to take my word for it, because you're probably like, the ADHD is strong with this one when I'm on here and with all my shenanigans and such. But it's true, in the real world, most of the time I am very, I don't know, maybe even people would say reserved. I've heard that I'm shy, not true at all. But in my mind, the idea of seeming like a loose cannon, like I'm all over the place, like I'm distractible and disorganized, is like embarrassing. And so I've always worked really hard to not be that way. So yeah, those are just a couple things that I think play into, in the biggest, guys, today. Those are a couple of the reasons that I think that women, their ADHD diagnoses get missed so much more often. Women and girls is just, in my experience, those are a couple of the ways that I kind of defy typical criteria for someone with ADHD, and the reasons for it. Again, that's just my personal experience. The reason why I don't, go off and on and on and on about stuff when I'm talking to people mostly is because it's control. Like I work very hard, and it's just second nature now. It's not like, oh my God, that was such hard work to like keep my mouth shut for those 10 minutes. It's not that, it's become so natural to me that it's just naturally how my ADHD comes out is not what your textbook definition might be. And I hope that by being public about things like this and my own little differences, it may help people who have either been misdiagnosed, haven't been diagnosed, or are just trying to understand more. Because we have these poster children for what ADHD and depression and especially with mental health, but like anything, we have these poster children for what, gamers look like, and what nerds are like, and what sports fans are like, and what someone with depression is like, and anxiety and ADHD. And I think it's helpful when more people talk, because then you realize that you can't really confine people with these conditions or these lifestyles or these interests in such a small box. And I think the more people talk about it, the less ashamed people have to feel when they have things that they're struggling with, or just things that they were born with, or interests that they have. No one should feel ashamed for things that we're dealing with or living with that are out of our control. And I think the more that we talk about this stuff, the more we kind of normalize it. And I'm not talking like dangerous stuff like, oh, I enjoy the drugs, so the more I talk about it, the more I'll normalize it, the more desensitized we'll become. And then drugs, like, yeah, of course I'm not talking about that kind of thing. Like, I'm not dumb. The more we talk about it, the more we all learn. I guess, I don't even know. That's all I've got for you guys today. Until next time, see you later. Bye everyone. Oh, why? Ooh, it's so awkward.